The great palace of Xylos stood like a mountain of glass and stone. Its towers reached high into the red sky, and its walls shone with silver light. Long banners of the royal family hung above the gates, each marked with a crest that told stories of battles, victories, and power. For thousands of years, the Xylosian Empire ruled its part of the galaxy, believing no other race could rival its strength. On this day, the palace was filled with excitement. A new delegation had arrived. They were not warriors from another empire, nor merchants from far-off worlds. They were humans, newcomers to the stars, young in galactic terms, barely known outside their small corner of space. To many in the court, the humans were little more than curious animals who had learned to fly ships. The alien nobles gathered in the grand hall, their clothes glowing with jewels, their faces sharp and proud. The hall itself was massive, with crystal pillars that seemed to touch the clouds. At the center sat the royal family, and among them was Prince Kale, the 21-year-old heir. He was tall and strong by the standards of his people, with bright golden skin and eyes that burned with arrogance. Into this hall walked the human delegation. They looked plain compared to the shining aliens. Their uniforms were simple blue and gray, their boots worn from travel. They did not shine with jewels or carry weapons made of crystal. They walked with calm steps, their faces serious but not fearful. At the front of the humans was Daniel Reed, a young officer chosen to speak for Earth. He was not the tallest among his people, nor the strongest, but he carried himself with quiet dignity. His hair was dark, his face calm, and his eyes steady. The hall grew silent as the humans stopped before the throne. A murmur of laughter spread among the nobles. To them, the humans looked weak, soft, and unimpressive. Prince Kale leaned forward, in his seat, his golden robe flowing around him. His voice echoed through the chamber. "So these are the humans," he said, his tone sharp with mockery, "the little race from the little blue world. Tell me, what do you hope to gain by standing here? Do you wish to beg for protection? Or do you believe you can teach us something with your short lives?" The nobles laughed. The sound was like a wave, rising and falling, echoing against the high walls. Some covered their mouths with long fingers, others clapped their hands in delight. To them, this was nothing more than a game, the young prince mocking the newcomers. Daniel Reed stood, still. He did not smile and he did not frown. He simply looked at the prince, his eyes steady, his face calm. For a long moment he said nothing. The silence grew heavier. Some expected him to protest, to defend his people with angry words. Others thought he would shrink back in shame. But Daniel did neither. Slowly, he turned. Without a word, he walked away. His boots echoed softly against the crystal floor as he moved toward the side of the hall. He did not hurry, nor did he bow. He simply walked, steady and calm, as if the words of the prince meant nothing. The hall exploded with laughter. The nobles shouted in delight, pointing at the human who dared to turn his back. To them it was proof that humans were weak, unable to face ridicule. Prince Kale laughed louder than all. "Look at them," he shouted. "Even their pride is hollow. They cannot even defend themselves with words." But in the shadows of the hall, not all shared the prince's joy. Some of the older nobles, those who had lived through wars and seen many races rise and fall, watched the human with narrow eyes. They did not laugh. Instead, they whispered among themselves. "Strange," one murmured. "He did not look afraid." "No," another replied softly. "He looked certain, as if the insult meant nothing to him." "Perhaps that is their strength," said a third, "to walk away when others expect them to fight." The laughter of the hall filled the air, but under it, seeds of doubt had been planted. Daniel walked calmly to the edge of the hall where the other humans stood. His fellow delegates looked at him with mixed feelings, some confused, some concerned, but Daniel only gave a small nod. He had no need to explain himself, not now. The prince, still proud from his joke, leaned back on his throne. To him the matter was finished. He had mocked the human, and the human had walked away. It was a victory in his young mind. But the older, Eyes of the court remained fixed on Daniel Reed. They had seen many proud voices rise and fall, many loud rulers defeated by quiet ones. Something about the human silence unsettled them. Far above, through the high windows of the hall, the red sky of Zelos stretched wide. The banners of the royal family waved in the wind, proud and untouchable. But below, in the heart of the palace, a small moment had passed, a moment that seemed simple, even laughable, yet carried weight none of them could measure. The young prince laughed. The court laughed, but one man had walked away, and in his silence, he had already begun to change the story. The laughter from the royal hall echoed long after the humans had left. To the nobles of Zelos, the insult had been nothing more than entertainment. They congratulated the young prince, clapping his back and praising his wit. Prince Kale enjoyed every moment, his golden eyes shining with pride. He believed he had humiliated the humans beyond repair. But outside the grand chamber, the whispers began. In the wide marble corridors of the palace, servants and guards spoke quietly. They remembered the calm face of the human officer who had not shouted, not argued, not begged. Instead, he had walked away, leaving behind silence that seemed heavier than anger. Some said he was afraid. Others said he was too weak to speak. But a few shook their heads and whispered, "No, that man was not afraid. He was certain. He walked as if the words of a prince meant nothing to him." Daniel Reed, meanwhile, spent the next hours exploring the palace grounds with his fellow humans. The palace gardens were filled with glowing flowers that shifted colors with the wind, and the fountains poured water that sparkled like starlight. Alien guards watched them closely, their eyes filled with disdain. The other humans whispered to Daniel. "You should have said something," one delegate told him. "You should have defended us." Daniel only shook his head. His voice was calm, as always. "Words would have fed their pride," he said. "Sometimes the strongest answer is silence." The others did not fully understand, but they trusted him. Daniel had a way of making people believe there was a greater plan even when he spoke very little. Back inside the palace, Prince Kale grew restless. He expected the humans to complain, to demand another meeting or at least to show anger. But instead they walked through the gardens, calm as if nothing had happened. Their quietness unsettled him more than their words ever could. He sat with his advisors, his voice sharp. Why do they not fight back? Why do they not try to prove themselves? The older nobles exchanged glances. None wanted to anger the prince, but one elder, Lord Varen, spoke carefully. Perhaps, my prince, it is because they do not feel the need. Perhaps their silence is their strength. Kale frowned. He was young, proud, and quick to anger. Strength? There is no strength in walking away. But Lord Varen only lowered his eyes and said nothing more. He had seen too much in his long life. He remembered other races who had laughed at humans, and how those same races later spoke with caution. Humans were unpredictable. That was what made them dangerous. That night, the palace hosted a feast. Tables of crystal stretched across the hall, filled with glowing fruits, roasted meats, and drinks that shimmered in silver cups. Music filled the air, and dancers in silk moved with grace. The humans were invited to join, but their seats were placed far from the prince. It was a clear sign. They were not honored guests, only tolerated visitors. Daniel sat quietly, eating little, observing much. He watched the nobles laugh too loudly, drink too deeply, and boast about their victories. He listened carefully to their words, remembering every detail. Across the hall, Prince Kale kept glancing toward him. The prince expected Daniel to show discomfort or shame. Instead, the human sat calm and steady, as if he belonged there more than anyone else. The prince clenched his fists beneath the table, frustrated that his mockery had not broken the man. Later, that night, as the feast ended and the nobles left, two older lords remained behind. They spoke softly in a corner of the hall. "You saw it too, didn't you?" one asked. "Yes," the other replied. The human silence was not weakness, it was choice. He did not give the prince the battle he wanted. The first lord nodded. "I fear the prince does not understand this. Pride blinds him." Their voices faded as they walked away, but their doubts remained. The human had unsettled them in ways no insult could erase. Meanwhile, in his private chambers, Prince Kale paced. His pride still burned. He could not accept that the human had walked away without fear. He wanted another chance to prove his superiority. He wanted the human to kneel, to show weakness, to give him victory. "I will make him play," Kyle muttered to himself. "He cannot ignore me forever." Far from the palace lights, Daniel looked out a window toward the alien sky. The stars of Zalos glimmered, strange and distant. He thought of Earth, of the people who trusted him to represent them, and of the path that lay ahead. He knew the prince would try again. He knew pride would not let Kale rest. But Daniel was ready. He did not seek conflict, yet if it came, he would face it on his own terms. Days passed since Daniel Reed had walked away from the prince's insult. Yet the memory of his calm, unshaken face lingered in the minds of the nobles of Zalos. Some whispered in the halls, still puzzled by the human's refusal to respond. Others laughed nervously, unsure whether the silence was weakness or hidden strength. Prince Kale, however, could not let it rest. His pride burned like a fire that refused to be cooled. Every moment Daniel had ignored him only fueled the prince's desire to dominate. "It is not enough to mock him once," Kale said to his advisors, pacing in his golden chamber. "He must compete, and he must fail. Then the court will see. What I see? Humans are weak and inferior." The elders hesitated. They had watched humans for decades, noting their unpredictability, their resilience, and their cleverness. Yet Kale was young, impatient, and determined. "Very well, Your Highness," one elder said carefully. "The games of pride are set to begin. Let the human enter. If he can withstand the contests, we will see whether he is mere luck or something more." The next morning, the great arena of Zalos shimmered under the red sky. The arena was enormous, circular, and open to the air with walls tall enough to block vision from the outside. Alien spectators filled the seats, excited to see the human fail. Daniel and his fellow humans were led to the arena floor. Daniel walked slowly, observing the architecture and the equipment, measuring distances and noting every detail. His calm presence drew attention, not just from the spectators but also from the young prince himself, who watched from the royal box above. The first contest was physical. The aliens had crafted a complex obstacle course, filled with towering walls, moving platforms, and laser grids. Kale smirked, confident that Daniel would collapse at the first hurdle. The race began. Aliens leapt with perfect precision, their long limbs carrying them effortlessly over obstacles. Many expected the human to struggle immediately. Daniel moved differently. He did not try to match their strength. Instead, he observed the patterns of the platforms, timed his jumps carefully, and sometimes chose paths the aliens ignored. He stumbled occasionally, but he recovered quickly, using his hands and arms creatively to climb or balance. The crowd murmured in surprise. He was slower than the aliens, but he completed the course. Not with raw power, but with cleverness and adaptability. Next came the mental contest. The arena walls shifted to reveal massive holographic puzzles, mazes, symbols, and logic games that required both memory and strategy. Aliens, with their sharp minds and training, expected to dominate. Daniel studied the puzzles quietly. Instead of rushing, he noticed patterns the aliens had overlooked. Symbols repeated in a sequence, hidden hints lay in colors, and small details revealed shortcuts. Using human reasoning and lateral thinking, he solved each puzzle steadily. The aliens around him grew uneasy. They were used to being the smartest in any room. Yet the human, who had appeared weak, was winning where they expected him to fail. The prince's golden face flushed with anger. He had expected laughter, not awe. He clenched his fists and called out, "This is impossible. He should have failed by now." Daniel did not respond. His calm demeanor never changed. He moved through each challenge with quiet confidence, never boasting, never seeking attention. Finally, the third challenge combined mind and body, a test of strategy and reflex. The arena was filled with moving obstacles and riddles projected in holographic form. Aliens relied on speed and memory, but humans excelled in improvisation. Daniel studied the obstacles, taking small risks that others would not dare. He jumped when necessary, ducked when safe, and sometimes created distractions to make the course easier for himself. Each action was deliberate, thought out, and unexpected. By the end, he crossed the finish line once again, calm and composed. The crowd went silent. The laughter that had greeted him earlier was replaced with shocked murmurs. Some aliens whispered to each other, realizing they had underestimated humans entirely. Prince Kale's face was red with frustration. His eyes, once confident, now burned with a mixture of anger and disbelief. He could not understand how a human, weak in appearance, had completed every challenge without seeming to struggle. One of the older nobles spoke quietly from the royal box. "Observe, my prince. It is not raw power that wins the day. Look at his mind, his calm, his refusal to be drawn into arrogance or anger. That is human strength." Kale glared down at the arena floor. Daniel stood there, breathing lightly, eyes scanning the crowd as if he were already thinking about what would come next. Kale's pride flared, but something inside him shifted, a small seed of respect. Daniel's fellow humans cheered quietly for him. They had always known his cleverness, his patience, and his calm in the face of pressure, but seeing it in action, before a court of beings who considered themselves superior, was a new revelation. The young prince leaned back on his throne, struggling to hide his frustration. "This is impossible," he muttered under his breath. "No human could succeed like this." And yet, even as Kale fumed, a part of him understood something he could not yet name. The human had done something more than win the games. He had shown that humanity was unpredictable, resourceful, and quietly confident. A race that could not be mocked or controlled with words alone. The arena emptied, but the murmurs did not stop. Nobles walked in the corridors, whispering about the human who had succeeded where many had expected him to fail. Their doubts grew. Their curiosity deepened. Humans were young, yes, but Daniel Reed had proven they could not be dismissed. Daniel, for his part, walked out of the arena as calmly as he had entered. He did not celebrate, did not boast, and did not look for approval. His mission was simple: represent humanity, observe the aliens, and survive. Everything else would follow naturally. In the royal box, Prince Kale stared after him, gold eyes narrowing. He would not admit it, but he was unsettled. He had mocked the human once, expecting laughter, but now he realized he had encountered something he had never faced before. A being who could not be measured by power, pride, or appearances. And somewhere, deep in Kyle's heart, a seed of caution began to grow. The games were not over, and he would have his chance to challenge the human again. But for the first time, he knew that underestimating him might be a mistake he could not afford. The Xylosian Empire had always believed itself untouchable. Its fleets patrolled the outer systems, its defenses were unmatched, and its armies had crushed every foe in countless wars. Yet no empire is truly invincible, and no plan survives the test of the unexpected. The morning began quietly. The royal hall was filled with nobles, discussing matters of trade, diplomacy, and celebration. Prince Kale sat in his golden throne, still simmering from the games of pride. He watched the humans calmly, still trying to understand their strange strength. Suddenly, alarms blared across the palace. Red lights flashed and the ground vibrated as if the palace itself had shuddered. A voice echoed through the corridors, urgent and metallic. "Alert! Alert! Unauthorized fleet detected. Incoming hostile vessels approaching the capital." Panic spread like wildfire. The nobles rose, shouting orders, calling messengers, and demanding explanations. Servants and guards ran in every direction, trying to maintain order. Even the young prince's face, usually so confident, tightened with worry. "Impossible! Kale shouted. Our sensors cannot be wrong. This is impossible. But the warning screens told the truth. A fleet of ancient war machines, long thought, destroyed in a forgotten galactic conflict, had reactivated and was heading straight for Xylos. They moved quickly, silent but deadly, their weapons ready to strike. The court froze. Panic replaced pride. The young prince found himself overwhelmed, unable to issue clear orders. The nobles debated strategy, arguing loudly over which defense measures to deploy. Chaos filled the hall. From the midst of the human delegation, Daniel. Reed remained calm. He observed the screens, the fleets, and the confusion around him. Unlike the aliens who relied on power and precision, Daniel considered what the enemy might do, predicting patterns and planning possible responses. One of the human delegates whispered, "We should intervene, Daniel. We know how to fight these machines. They won't respond like living beings." Daniel nodded. "Yes, but first we must understand the battlefield. Panic will kill more than the enemy." The prince, noticing the calm humans in the midst of chaos, scowled. He did not understand how anyone could remain composed while death approached. He had expected humans to fear, to beg, or at least to falter. Yet Daniel's calm gaze challenged him without a word. Seeing an opportunity, Daniel stepped forward. His voice was steady as he addressed the council. "I have studied similar fleets before," he said. "Their programming is rigid. They respond to direct attacks and predictable patterns. We can defeat them, but not with brute force. We must be creative, use misdirection, and act unpredictably." The older nobles murmured, some skeptical, some intrigued. Kale's pride flared. He wanted to ignore the humans' advice. He wanted to order his ships and crush the machines in traditional fashion. "Enough," Kale snapped. "We have the strongest fleet in the sector. We do not need suggestions from a human." Daniel did not respond with anger. He only met the prince's gaze with calm certainty. "Your fleet is powerful," he said, "but against these machines, raw strength alone will fail. If you follow me, we can save." The Xylosian capital had returned to its quiet beauty. Towers of glass glimmered under the red sky. Fountains sparkled with floating light, and the streets buzzed with life. The rogue machine fleet had been destroyed, and the city was safe. Yet the memory of the battle and the human who had led it lingered in every mind. Daniel Reed walked calmly through the palace gardens once more. His uniform was slightly worn from the battle, but his posture remained steady and composed. He observed the glowing flowers, the shifting fountains, and the alien guards who now regarded him with something approaching awe. He did not boast, and he did not seek recognition. He had acted because it was necessary, because the lives of countless beings depended on calm reasoning and quick thinking. The young prince, Kyle, watched him from the royal terrace. His golden eyes, once filled with arrogance and mockery, were now thoughtful. He had laughed at Daniel once, expecting ridicule, yet now the human's calm strength had saved the empire. The prince's pride wrestled with admiration. "You did what I never imagined possible," Kyle said, stepping forward. His voice was steady, but carried the weight of his awe. "You have proven humans are not as weak as we believed. You have proven your species can stand among the greatest in the galaxy." Daniel nodded slightly, maintaining his calm demeanor. "We did it together. Humans and Xylosians. That is all that matters." The court gathered in the grand hall for a formal acknowledgement of the victory. Nobles whispered in awe, curious how a species they once mocked had risen to such importance in a single day. Some elders approached Daniel cautiously, offering words of respect. Even Kale's advisors, who had doubted him, now regarded the human with genuine admiration. Yet Daniel did not seek any titles, medals, or rewards. He had no desire to take credit for the victory. For him, the most important outcome was the safety of the people and the proof that calm thinking, courage, and cooperation could achieve what brute force could not. The young prince's golden robes shimmered as he stepped toward Daniel. Kale lowered his gaze, considering what to say. Finally, he spoke with sincerity. Earth has sent a remarkable representative. You have earned respect, though you did not ask for it. Know that your species will always have a place here, and I have learned that underestimating you is a mistake I will not repeat. Daniel inclined his head politely. I appreciate that, Your Highness, but our time here is limited. Earth has much to do, and we must continue our own work. I hope cooperation will continue, but I am not here for praise. Kale nodded slowly, a mixture of pride and humility in his expression. He had learned a lesson about strength, patience, and courage that no book or ceremony could teach him. He realized that true power often comes quietly, without spectacle, without demands. As Daniel prepared to leave, the court gathered to witness his departure. They expected some ceremonial farewell, some acknowledgement of his heroism. But Daniel simply walked. He moved steadily, calmly, and with dignity. He did not look back. He did not raise his hand in triumph. The nobles of Zelos watched in silence, a mixture of respect and astonishment. The young prince, who had once mocked him, followed briefly with his gaze. Kale's mind replayed every action of the human. The calm during insults, the cleverness in the games, and the courage in the battle. Each moment had revealed a truth that no boasting or pride could replace. Humanity's greatest strength was in its quiet certainty and resilience. Outside the year, Palace Daniel's ship waited. The humans climbed aboard, their expressions filled with admiration for their leader. They did not need words. They knew that Daniel had changed the way Zelosians would view Earth forever. The engines roared to life, and the ship lifted into the red sky, leaving the capital behind. From above, the city looked peaceful, unaware that it had been saved not by strength alone, but by calm, clear thought and courageous action. Back in the palace, Prince Kyle stood in silence. The wind brushed past his golden robes, and he felt the emptiness of pride without wisdom. He realized something important. Laughter and mockery might seem powerful, but true influence comes from understanding, patience, and integrity. The nobles around him whispered once more, now with reverence instead of mockery. Humans, one said. They never act as expected. That is their power. Kale's lips pressed together as he nodded. The memory of Daniel's calm presence etched into his mind. He had seen it once, and now again, in the final act of leaving the capital without seeking glory. The human had turned, had walked away, yet left an impression stronger than any speech, any display, or any battle cry. In the weeks and months that followed, the story of Daniel Reed spread throughout the Zelosian Empire. Scholars wrote about the human who had refused to fight with words, who had used creativity and courage to save the capital, and who had walked away without seeking honor. Children grew up hearing the tale, and leaders learned to respect humans as a species that could not be underestimated. Earth, too, would hear of Daniel's actions, though he remained quiet about his accomplishments. For him, the most important legacy was not fame, but the proof that humanity could meet the galaxy's challenges with intelligence, courage, and calm determination. And so, Daniel Reed returned home, carrying the silent honor of a people underestimated for centuries. He had faced ridicule, games of pride, and the threat of destruction, yet he had shown that humanity's greatest power was not in arrogance or strength, but in steadfast courage and thoughtful action. The young prince of Zelos would never forget the human who had walked away twice, once in silence against mockery, and once after saving an empire. That quiet departure left a lasting lesson. Sometimes the greatest victories are not celebrated loudly, but are remembered quietly in respect and understanding. Daniel Reed turned, his back on the alien world one final time, leaving behind not just an empire, but a mark of humanity that would echo across the stars for generations to come. The sky above Zelos burned red and gold as the remnants of the rogue machine fleet closed in on the capital. Alien warships and human vessels formed a shaky line of defense, their crews tense and ready. The city below glittered with crystal towers and floating platforms, innocent in their beauty, unaware of the danger overhead. Daniel Reed stood at the front of the combined fleet, calm as ever. He observed the enemy ships with quiet focus, noting their speed, formation, and the predictable ways they would respond. While most aliens panicked, issuing frantic commands, Daniel's presence brought a measure of control to the chaos. Prince Kale watched him from his command ship, his golden eyes wide with both awe and frustration. He had mocked this human before, believing pride alone could intimidate him. Now he saw that Daniel's strength was not in loud words or aggressive gestures, but in strategy, courage, and calm thinking under pressure. "Do we trust him?" Kale asked one of his advisors, voice tight. The advisor hesitated, then said quietly, "We have no choice. He has predicted their moves better than any of us." Daniel's plan was simple, yet risky. Instead of attacking the enemy fleet head-on, he divided the combined force into smaller squads. Decoy groups drew the enemy away from the capital, while the main force targeted weak points in the machine's formations. Every move was calculated to exploit the predictable nature of the enemy's programming. The first wave of human and alien ships darted forward, luring the machines into traps. The decoy fleets fired lightly, drawing attention without engaging fully. The enemy responded predictably, charging toward the false targets, unaware that the main strike force prepared to strike at their flanks. Daniel himself led a squadron into the heart of the battle. He maneuvered his ship with precision, weaving through laser fire and debris with a calm efficiency that amazed both humans and aliens alike. While others panicked at near misses, Daniel remained focused, adjusting positions and coordinating attacks in real time. Alien pilots shouted in surprise as they watched human ships dive into danger and emerge unscathed. Daniel's leadership and bravery inspired them to follow orders they might otherwise have ignored, and soon the tide of the battle began to shift. Prince Kale clenched his fists as he observed the humans' unorthodox methods. He could not deny that Daniel's strategies were working. The enemy machines designed to crush through force were being manipulated by cunning rather than strength. The prince realized that this human possessed qualities no Zelosian had ever seen before. Ingenuity, patience, and fearlessness combined in a single mind. The battle raged on. Laser fire streaked across the sky, and explosions sent fragments of enemy ships spinning into the void. Human pilots executed daring maneuvers, outsmarting their opponents with unexpected paths and clever tactics. Alien soldiers, inspired by the humans' courage, fought harder and more creatively than they ever had. As the fleet reached the enemy flagship, Daniel issued his final orders. A small strike team, including him, would draw the flagship into a trap, where hidden turrets and explosive mines awaited. The maneuver was dangerous and failure would mean certain destruction. Daniel glanced at his squad. His voice was calm but firm. "Follow my lead. Trust the plan. Stay focused." Without hesitation, the squadron executed the maneuver. They lured the massive enemy ship into the trap,